we are going to be talking about kind of crushing goals and taking names. And that's kind of a takeoff of what I used to, say to my kid when he would go on to into a hockey game and be like, kick ass and take names, right? Just try your best. And that's what we're going to be doing about goals this year. You're going to see we kind of mixed up what our Monday Moxie newsletter looks like. We did some analysis and we realized that you guys really, over 80% of you guys read the newsletters on your mobile. And so we wanted to switch up how it looked, how it flowed, to make sure that it was not just valuable, but also easy for you guys to read and consume, where you can kind of scroll quickly if you wanted to get to the other parts. We are also going to be sending out the replays of these on Wednesday morning to the newsletter group, because we feel like sometimes 11 o'clock Eastern doesn't work for everybody. It works for my schedule. And ironically, I chose this day and time because exactly that. My kids it was a summertime when I started these. They were in tutoring at this time, so my house was quiet. So it kind of made sense. And I've just been consistent with it since. So not everybody can make it, but they want to watch it and they can't sometimes find it in the group, even though we kind of pin it to the feature section. So we're going to email the replay link out. So if you ever in the future miss it, just know the next day you'll receive the link on Wednesday morning. That's kind of the two bigger updates. We have some fun things coming up for 2025. The next Savvy in the Square networking event is next week. And then we're also kicking off a 10-part workshop series. And we announced it yesterday in the newsletter. We'll put an event for January's as well. We'll get that up this week for you guys, but registration is open, so I'll pop that link in. Yeah, and there's some other fun things coming down the pipe. We're just kind of putting some final details together around them. Okay. Wow, I feel like I'm talking really fast, so I apologize. I'm just kind of getting myself together here. For those of you that are new to the group, welcome. I'm Karen Kleinwort. I have been hosting these live trainings for almost a year and a half now, every Tuesday, besides the holidays in the first week of July, are the ones that we don't normally host a live training on. One, to allow you guys to really take some time off and really model for you guys that rest and holidays are important, that we need to give that permission to ourselves. And two, so I get to have some time with my family as well. I have been doing business coaching for over 18 years now, and I take a holistic approach where we do the mind, body, and spirit. They're integrated, so we make sure that when we're looking at goals and strategies and solutions, we're taking all of you into consideration, not just the business, but you as a person, your, kind of what is aligned with your soul, with who you are, where you want to be in life. We just make sure that everything kind of falls into place, so that way it's sustainable when we set those goals for you and your business. That's kind of who I am. This group is really a place for you to come and gather and ask questions and to lean in and get some guidance. And I really am grateful that all of you guys are here. We've grown a ton in the last year, and I anticipate it to grow even more this year. So lean in, ask questions, reach out for support. We're here. We are a collective. Okay. So I'm going to ask, I see Sharon. Good morning, Sharon. I'm going to ask you guys to think about, what are the goals you've set? And I know New Year's is always like, oh, what are my resolutions? What am I going to be doing this year? What am I going to achieve? What do I want to accomplish? And so for our business, we kind of do the same thing, right? We kind of say, what do we want to accomplish in our business for the year? Where do we see ourselves in 6 months and 9 months from now? And so I want you to think about, if you had to kind of look at your overarching goal for the year, what would it be? If you were to fast forward to January 7th, 2026, and look back and say, I did it. This is the one that I wanted. This is what I really wanted to achieve. What would be that goal? What would be something that you'd be like, yeah, I did it? And when we think of these things, we are going to first think of business, because that's why we're here. But I also want you to think of you as a person, as an individual. What would you like to see for yourself as a person for 2025? So now thinking of two goals. One for your business. What's that kind of big, scary goal you want to go after this year? And then for you as a person, what's one thing you would like to do for you So for me, for 2024, as I've always been afraid of giving blood. So my personal goal for myself was to actually go and donate blood. And yes, so I'm 55, never given blood before, scared of needles. Even when I was pregnant twice, they would have to like lay me down to take, when they have to do all the blood work, right? Nervous, sweaty, but I did it. I went actually 3 different times and donated. And I'm like so proud of myself because that was like a huge fear. I don't even know what kind of fear that's called. I know there's a name for it, but it had plagued me my whole life. But I got over it. Like I did it. And so that was a huge thing for me. So I want you to think about, what does that look and feel like for you for this coming year? And again, when you think about giving blood, it's kind of a big thing, but for most, it may not be. So they might think it's a small, make a goal for yourself. So Sharon's saying that will be getting more advertising done, getting my business name out there. Personally, would love to do more educational talks. I love it. I love it, Cheryl. So Sharon, so we're going to actually walk through some steps. So we will use some of one of the 2 goals, Sharon, that you've posted, and we'll kind of use those as an example and kind of walk through those with you, if that's okay. So the 3 things we're going to talk about: we're going to define some goals, we're going to identify and eliminate barriers, and then we're going to break down the goals into more actionable steps. And for those of you that have never watched before, you're going to see me kind of go side to side. I kind of have 2 different things on either side of me. So I'm watching comments and checking my Cole's notes, as you might say, to make sure I'm staying on track and I don't get diverted and distracted. So those are the 3 things we really want to talk about today. And we're going to walk through, we're going to use Sharon's example that she posted and share with us. And so let's begin. So when we say, what is our goal? So getting more advertising done, that's a great goal. So when we define our goals, we want to define them by priority. We want to list all of our goals and then we want to prioritize them. So when Sharon's talking about more advertising and getting her business name out there, so it's 2 different goals. They're related, but they're still 2 different ones. We'd want to prioritize those. So Sharon, what would be the one of the 2 that you would put first? What would be your main priority out of those 2? Because we want to make sure we're using a system when we prioritize, something like the Eisenhower matrix, where it's urgent versus important, or it's non-urgent or it's not important. We kind of put our priorities in each one of those quadrants. And then we want to go after those urgent and important ones. And then that's like quadrant 1, right? And then quadrant 4 is non-important, non-urgent. And those are the ones where we're doom scrolling. Kind of, they're not really productive. They're more busy work. And so Sharon says, right, her first priority would be getting her business name out there. Awesome. So when we're looking at that as our number 1 priority, we need to start to say, for that to happen, for us to get our name out there, we want to work through, and you'll hear it all the time, right? That SMART framework, right? Is it specific? Is it measurable? Is it attainable? Is it relatable to your overarching business goals? And then is there a timeline? So thinking about getting our business name out there, is it specific? What would make getting our name out there more specific? How can we kind of hone in on that to make it where we can say, okay, so how can we measure that? Because if it's not specific enough, we can't measure it. So getting our name out there, how would that look? And my phone is, when I watch the comments, is about 30 seconds behind. So if I take a break, that's why. Good morning, Missy. So you want to say, what does that mean? What does it mean for me to get my business? How is that tangible? How will I know that my business name has become more aware? Being known for my services. Okay, what does that look like? What does being known for your services look like? And this is where I get to play devil's advocate, right? Because we're going to kind of, to really get specific, we kind of keep having to go a little bit deeper. So being known for my services means what to you? Means, how does that look for you on a daily or weekly basis? Does it mean you're ranking in the Google searches? You're coming up on people's news feeds more often because the engagement is there? Are you the go-to person that people call for your services? And you'll know that by the increase of incoming leads, people reaching directly out to you. So using that as an example, Sharon, if you were to say how many on average incoming leads do you get a week or in a month? If you were to look at kind of 2024, what would have been the average looking back? And you don't have to give me specifics. You can kind of give me, you can fluff the numbers you want. We want to, respect your privacy as well. So think about that. Go to person by increase in leads. Okay. So knowing what we were having in 2024. So let's just say 0 now. Okay. All right. So, but that's a great starting point. Guess what? You can only go up from here, right? So that's the best part. So, your average incoming right now is 0. So to attain more, my business being out there, being known, incoming leads, if you had 10 a month, would that be realistic for you to be averaging 10 new leads a month for your business? Because see, now we're getting specific, right? And we're getting measurable. So now we want to really check, is it attainable? Based on the systems you have in place, the outreach you have in place, your social media exposure, what you're doing to kind of put yourself out there, your networking. Okay, so yes, that would be awesome. Okay, so if we set that goal of an average of 10 incoming leads a month by the end of 2025, that means you might have 8 one month, you might have 12 another month, you might have 6, you might have 15. It will fluctuate. So that's why we're going to say on average 10 a month. So Sharon says, yes, she believes that's attainable. Perfect. So now the next part of that framework, is it relatable? So it's going to be relatable to the fact you want your business to thrive and to flourish. Absolutely. By increasing your incoming leads to an average of 10 a month, it's absolutely going to be relatable to that overarching goal, right, of being successful. The last one is timely. Do we have a time associated with it? And what did we say by the end of 2025? So we have a timestamp. So now that goal of having an average 10 new leads a month is a SMART goal because we're specific, we can measure it, it's attainable, it's relatable, and it's timely. Okay, so we know that. We've done that second part of when we're defining our goals. The third step for when we're defining our goals is, how do we document and share it? And you might ask, well, I'm a solopreneur, like it's just me. Who am I going to share it with? And why would I have to document it? And those are two great questions. You want to document because it's the beginning of you holding yourself accountable. So whether you put it up on a whiteboard or on a sticky note, somewhere where you can see it all the time, that your goal is to get 10 new incoming leads a month. You want it someplace. You want to write it down. You want to commit to it. And I'll tell you why in a second. Right? You want to document it. You want to share it. Who are you going to share it with? Well, right now, Sharon has just shared it with all of us. So guess what we get to play? We get to play her accountability partners. We get to cheer her on and support her every step of the way through the next 12 months. So going back to that documentation, why we want to document is because when we put something in writing, we write it down and put it up, or we write it down and put it in a booklet that we access all the time. It reminds us what it is we're going after. It's reminding us where we want to go. And it allows us to say, I can do this. I don't have excuses. I have reasons. Right? So the documentation sometimes is more about keeping our mindset focused and allowing us to kind of keep refocusing. And then as we move forward, and we'll kind of get to these in the next 2 steps that we're going to go through, is all of the decisions you're going to make from here on out. When you put together stepping stones or milestones to achieve this goal, and you're putting it through that SMART framework, and you get to that R, the relatable, you're going to say, is this action, is this decision relatable to the 10 leads a month coming into my business? So now this goal is what all sub goals are going to be related to. And that's the other reason you want it documented and pinned someplace. So that way you can remind yourself, every decision I'm making, every step I'm taking, does it relate to what I want to do? And that's getting my name out there by having 10 incoming leads a month. Does that make sense? So now I'm just pausing. I'm waiting for my comments to catch up. So I'll give her a few minutes to respond. So that's like the first step. When we're talking about crushing our goals, defining our goals through that SMART framework is critical. And you're going to hear this whole SMART framework more than once. You're going to hear it from every single person that does any type of business support, whether it be a VA or a business consultant or a business coach or a mentor. They're going to talk about it all the time. It's so important. So understanding that framework is the key to really defining and setting your goals. The second thing that we want to be looking at when we're looking at really crushing our goals after we've defined them, right? And we've written them down and we know exactly what it is we want to do. We need to identify what are the barriers to us achieving that goal. So for Sharon, what could be a barrier for her to achieving that 10 a month incoming lead goal? What would be some barriers, something to hold her back from doing that? One of the ways you can determine that is by completing a SWOT analysis. And if, for those of you that are new to business, you may have heard the term and the acronym SWOT, but you may not quite understand it, and that's okay. So a SWOT analysis, for those that might not be aware, is strengths, S, W, weaknesses, O, opportunities, and T, threats. So you basically create a matrix, a 2x2 matrix, and you put SWOT. And underneath each quadrant, you're going to write in and answer the question. What are my strengths? What are all the things that are really unique and beneficial within my business? What are my strengths? What do I do best? And then under the W, what are my weaknesses? What do I need to improve? What are some of the things that I could do better? You want to write those down. And this is where you have to tear off the Band-Aid and be really honest with yourself and get vulnerable and say, okay, yeah, maybe I'm not very good at public speaking. Maybe I need to do better, right? So what are your weaknesses? And then for the O, the opportunities, you want to write down what are the opportunities for you to create incoming leads. What are some of the things that you can see and do? Is there other networking events that maybe you hadn't thought of or that you didn't know about? Spend some time and really get clear about what are those opportunities. You may have some already that you know about that you haven't taken advantage of, or that you are working and that you find are successful, but not as successful as you thought they were, but there's still opportunities. And then the last quadrant is the T, so threats. These are your competitors, right? So what could be standing in your way to hold you back from achieving your goals? And some of that might be what is going on with the economy, locally, internationally, whatever, right? What could it be impacting you? What are those threats? Because when you understand those 4 quadrants, then you start to say, okay, now I'm going to be able to uncover internally for me personally or my business, and externally, external forces like government, competitors, that kind of thing, right? What are those challenges? Because it's important to understand, like self-doubt can be one of those challenges, right? It can be your weakness, it can be your threat, right? So I need to work on my confidence, might be something to overcome that. So you want to be able to know, what are those challenges? Because if you don't know them, if you can't identify them and put a name on, then you can't do what's next, which is brainstorm solutions and get clear about why they are a weakness, why they are a threat, because those are the two barriers for you reaching the goals, right? We want to know, what are the constraints? Do I have the capacity to be able to do this goal? And what are my contingency plans? So if we use, Sharon's thing of 10 incoming leads and her self-doubt as one of her weaknesses, right? So the constraint is the self-doubt's going to impact my ability to share my business, to speak to other people about my business, to share my business in a networking event. That's going to be a constraint, right? So in order for me to expand my capacity, right, my capacity to be able to speak and share and be confident, I need to what? I need to be more confident. I need to be resilient. Meaning if I hear feedback that, oh, I don't really like that, it's a bit, how am I going to be resilient against that kind of feedback? So what are my constraints? What's my capacity? And then what's my contingency plan? So if I am working on my confidence, while I'm working on my confidence, is there an alternate plan I can be doing instead of what it might take for me to be confidently sharing, right? And sometimes that confidently sharing looks like getting on a live camera like I'm doing right now. It looks like having your face inside of all of your social media content that you're sharing. It looks like you standing in front of a crowd and introducing your business. It's about having your face forward, right? A contingency might be being faceless. And you hear that term a lot too, right? Using faceless marketing, where you're highlighting other elements of your business while you get confident to be in front of camera, to be on stage type thing. So for me, going back to when we were first starting this live training, and I had mentioned I'd been doing these live trainings for about 1.5 years, this was actually a challenge from my business coach. And he challenged me to do a weekly live because I never wanted to be on the camera. I never wanted to get my picture taken. And it goes back to when I was a child, there'd be all of us cousins and, you do the age, from the youngest to the oldest. And I was always backwards. I never wanted to have my picture taken. And it was a running joke in my family. So these live stream trainings were his challenge to me to be front and center, to stand in my confidence, to be able to share my knowledge and make a connection that's deeper than just typing on a keyboard, right? So here I am, 18 months, almost 19 months later. I think we've only missed like 6 weeks in total. So consistency of showing up is working for me, right? So knowing what your constraints are around those weaknesses, around those threats, it's going to be really important. Understanding the capacity to overcome them. And then contingency plans to be able to have in place while you work through the other pieces of it. Okay. So the third element, when we're talking about identifying and eliminating our barriers, is setting those milestones and checkpoints. Because remember when I said you want to document and you're going to put it up where you can see it? This is part of it. You want to have some place where you're saying, this is what I'm going after. All these little steps, these milestones are going to get me there. So think about that. So we want 10 new leads. If we're saying that's the main goal, what are the sub goals? How do we, because that's incoming leads, right? Not you making cold calls or cold DMs. So how do we achieve that? What are the steps you need to take to build brand awareness? And those steps are your milestones. And each one is like a checkpoint that when you achieve this milestone, you might be saying, oh, now I'm having like 1 or 2 incoming leads. When I achieve the next milestone, now I'm up to 4 or 5 leads. When I get to the next checkpoint, I'm up to 6 or 7, and so on and so forth, right? So your milestones and checkpoints are what's going to help you stay accountable to yourself and to those that are cheering you on and helping you keep on track. So identifying and eliminating barriers is about knowing your areas of weakness, your threats, having a contingency plan, knowing the capacity that you have to be able to overcome them. And then, are there constraints that are going to hold you back? Then implementing your milestones and checkpoints. Does that make sense? Because this all rolls back up into when we define our original goal, our prioritizing, right, and documenting and sharing. So if I'm going to challenge you, Sharon, if you could think of one weakness or one threat that could hold you back from achieving your average of 10 leads a month, what might that be? And it's okay if you don't want to share. Absolutely, it's fine. You can just say, oh, I know what it is. See, I always have a coffee or tea or water to drink, forces me to slow down. Okay, so we've gone through, right? Crushing goals this year starts with defining your goals, getting really specific and prioritizing, putting them through that SMART framework, documenting, sharing them for an accountability. We want to do a SWOT analysis so we can really identify what our weaknesses and threats might be. We want to brainstorm solutions around what our constraints, capacity, or our contingency plans might be. And then we want to set milestones and checkpoints because those will help us stay accountable. Okay. So those are the first 2 things that we want to be thinking about for this coming year when we're setting these goals, whether they're big or small, it doesn't matter, personal or business. The third thing, tongue-tied there for a moment, right, is breaking down those goals into actionable steps. So what does that look like? When you think of actionable steps, it kind of sounds a lot like or similar to your milestones and checkpoints. The difference between milestones and your actual steps are, it's all, think of this way, if you're looking or reading an article and there's the main heading and it uses, when you're thinking of coding, like the header 1 or the H1 tag for the main title. That's your increasing leads to 10 a month. And then you have your subheading, so your H2. That becomes your milestone. And then your actual steps are your paragraph or your bullet points underneath that. So you see that it starts off large, smaller, and then the sub steps. So when you think of creating goals, milestones, and actual steps, think about it in that type of frame where it's header 1, header 2, and paragraph, because the size gets smaller, but they're all rolling back up to that main header 1 main goal. Okay, so when we're thinking about, so 10 leads a month is increasing sales, right? That's kind of what it can be reframed as. Are we just increasing sales? What does that mean? It means we are going to launch a new marketing campaign. We are going to create new captions, new imagery that all aligns with increasing leads, connecting to your audience, engaging with them, and having them reach out to you in response to what you're posting. So you're going to look at, what does that marketing campaign look like and feel like? How is your messaging? Getting clear on your messaging, right? That might be another actual step. Clarify message. Another actual step is get clear on, and you're going to hear the word clear a lot, you're going to get clear on who my avatar is, my buyer persona. That's your first actual step. You really want to make sure, if you've not reviewed who your perfect client is, you want to do that now. And I tell all of my clients, you want to review your avatar, your client persona, at least once a year. And if you've made any major changes to your business, you want to revisit that avatar again to confirm that you are still speaking to the correct person for this big change. Okay? Or you're going to, before you implement a change, you want to make sure that it matches the needs of your current avatar. You do not want to change your avatar. So, actual steps, check in who your avatar is, your client persona. Is your messaging on point with that person? Is it attractive to them? Is it something that they're going to want to engage in? And your visuals, does it match the new messaging for that client persona? Those 3 bullets roll up into new marketing campaign, which roll up into having 10 new leads a month, right? So it's great that we have these 3 actionable steps. But remember, one of the things of the SMART framework is time frame. So even though you might have a time frame for that header of 10 leads a month, you need a time frame for each and every milestone and each and every step. Make sense? Because if you don't have a time associated with each of those steps, then how will you know you've achieved it in a timely manner to achieve the overarching goal? So when you assign the deadlines, it helps you stay accountable. It ensures that you are staying on track, focused, and determined that you are going to achieve this, right? It builds that confidence. I can do this. I'm meeting these smaller actual steps on my deadlines, which means my milestones are getting done on time, which means I'm going to succeed on getting my average of 10 leads a month by the end of the year. Helpful? The last piece is tracking progress. Because that's great to write everything down. It's great to identify what goals you want to do and the milestones and all the steps you need to do and when you want them done by. But the last piece to all of this is tracking. How are you keeping track of your actions and the completion of your steps to ensure that you're able to move on to the next step? What's your progress tracking system? Do you have one? Some people might say there's program management tools, right? There's goal tracking worksheets and timetables and Gantt charts and things, right? So think about what works for you when you want to track your progress and keep accountable to yourself. How are you going to do that? Is it a Google sheet, an Excel sheet? Is it something on the wall. And here's a little tidbit. You may start with one, and then 2 or 3 weeks into it, you realize this is not working for me. I need to do it differently. And that's okay. Knowing what doesn't work is as valuable as knowing what doesn't work. So be okay with saying, I'm going to try this. And then in 2, 3, 4 weeks, realize it's not really working. So I'm going to try something else. The key is to continuously keep track of your progress. And learning how we like to keep track and how we want to be accountable is really important. And it's one of the foundations to us really being successful, right? It's always going to be a trial and error until you figure out the solution. And to follow up on that, just because it works today, whatever that solution looks like, just because it works today does not mean that in a year from now, you haven't outgrown it. So using that 10 a month for incoming leads right now, where Sharon is, using a handwritten note works, right? Because of the capacity she has right now. But in a year from now, when she's averaging 10 or more a month, those handwritten notes may not be good enough. She has outgrown them. That means she's going to want to look for a new approach to keeping track of her progress. Make sense? Those are the 3 main steps you want to be walking through to really setting those goals that you want to crush this year. Right? We want to define our goals. We want to identify and eliminate the barriers. And we want to break down into actionable steps so we can track our progress. So yes, this looks like I'm a talking head, but I'm really here to answer questions and to support you guys working through all of these. So 1, was this helpful? And 2, what questions do you have? And if you're watching the replay, post them. Facebook does notify me that people have commented. But if for some strange reason Facebook doesn't, and I haven't responded to your question in a timely manner, which to me is within 24 hours, please send me a DM or tag me so I can be aware and I can support you on whatever your questions might be. So, okay, yes, it was. Awesome, Sharon. Do you have any questions? Any specifics you want to maybe work through? Okay, so Sharon's question is, what advertising options do you suggest? So advertising is something of a different bird from it was, 15 years ago, right? Advertising before was yellow pages, newspapers, that type of thing. And so, right, so she's saying, and exactly this was going to, like marketing agencies are expensive. So advertising can come down to running Facebook ads. But here's a caveat, doing any type of meta advertising, whether it be on Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, Facebook itself, it can be expensive. And if you really don't know what you're doing, you can waste a lot of money on them. Sometimes Facebook will say, oh, boost this content. Boosting normally isn't recommended because it's kind of like throwing a dart at a map and hoping it lands on the exact city you want. So, but meta ads will work if you can get clear on who that audience you're speaking to, what that messaging looks like, and the imagery. And so so that's one option. The other is, depending upon your service, you may want to look at some of the groups offer you the ability to self-promote on a daily basis. So some of the larger groups will charge you a monthly fee where you then post every single day something about your business. But the key is making sure you put them through your audience, whoever sees your content, that you are getting the like, know, and trust, right? Or the know, like, and trust. So you want people to get to know you, which is the name awareness, brand awareness, like you, and then trust you for them to do business. So if you are a local business, so where I live in mid-Michigan, if I was a service that was just specifically for this area, I'd be looking at what are some of the Chamber of Commerce events? What are some small business networking events that are happening in my area? I'd be looking at local Facebook groups for my area. So here in Midland, we've got, I think, 4 or 5 small business groups specifically for this area. So being members of something like that type of small business, you can be posting and sharing so people get to know you in your area. If geography is not a constraint, where you can work with anybody, from like as a coach, I'm able to work with people anywhere in the US, in Canada, Europe, right? Australia. The time zones are not a constraint for me. So for me, it's for getting people to know me wherever I feel I can connect with the most people. So take a look at those local Facebook groups. If you have local newspapers, if you have access to the Chamber of Commerce in your area, they might do, sometimes they'll have a sliding scale regarding their fees. Yeah, those would be where the places I'd start. And then start doing some research on what Facebook or Meta ads might be able to do for you. I know I went through their certification program last year. Now it was, I guess, yeah, last May I went through it. And one of the things that we're taught is, whoever you're running ads for, they have to have a large amount of money to be able to invest for it to be successful. So for us small guys, following their formula doesn't work because they're talking like $20,000 to $30,000 a month. So who they're aiming for is those larger companies with deeper pockets, well-established, not really for us small guys. They will still work for us small guys, but we just have to be really specific around what we're doing within those ads. And set realistic goals around what we want to attain and making sure we stay on budget. So I think those would be the first places, Sharon, I'd recommend from an advertising perspective. Yeah, that would be where I'd start, is really kind of, looking into, based on your geography, are you constrained by that or not? And then where can you get some free acknowledgement and advertising in those Facebook groups and really, interact and really be educational. So that way people can get to see you and get to like what you do and offer. Because the last thing people want is to be sold, right? So if you can kind of meet them where they're at and offer them support, whether it's personal or otherwise, then they get to know you and they'll start to look for you. Okay. Any other questions? I am going to put the link to the 10-part workshop series. You can sign up for all 10 workshops, or you can pay as you go for each workshop that kind of speaks to you. They start the last week of January and they'll be ran monthly for 2025. They stand alone, but they kind of build on each other. And the title of it is Unlocking Potential, the Growth Blueprint. And so we're kind of following a system to help you identify and grow your business over the course of the years. Okay, I think that's it. If you don't have any more questions, we'll call it good. If you have any topics you want to talk about, let me know. You're welcome, Sharon. And then the Savvy in the Square networking event is next week. There's an event in the group Thursday at 12:30 Eastern, I believe it is. And then the 10-part workshop series, I'll post it as well in the comments. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate you, Sharon, for allowing me to use you as our guinea pig today as we walk through our crushing our goals this year. So I wish you all a beautiful day. Thanks for being part of the journey, and we'll see you next week.